friends, Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video channel. This is Huck TV, the channel you want to be on for the most up-to-date information on missing people. And that is our executive producer wearing her life preserver when she was out on the lake this last summer, looking very esteemed. And there she is, snoozing right now. You're a good girl. Yes, you're a good girl. Oh, scratchy. Yeah. Oh, that feels good, doesn't it? Oh, yeah. You're a good girl. Oh, yeah, you're a good pup. I'll give you more when we're done, okay? Okay, Dad. She's up for that. Well, some of you have been asking, hey, Dave, what happened to the movies? They're not on Tubi anymore. That's right. So Tubi has a rotation, and I guess we're on the rotation to come off for a month or two. But the movies are still on Amazon, so you can go there and watch them. And I wish you would. And we just got a whole supply in of our new hardbacks. This is the softback, but we have the hardbacks in right now. Bigfoot, Wildmen, and Giants. Those are signed editions. I'll sign them to everybody. And they're on our website. Last time they sold out in, I think, 2 days. So get on them as fast as you can. And I appreciate the support. A lot of comments lately about, hey, Dave, I've never been unsubscribed, and I always get my notifications. Those aren't the people that we're really concerned about. It's the ones who don't get those. And our latest count is there's thousands of you that have been unsubscribed, thousands of you that aren't getting notifications. An equal number of those have been unsubscribed, resubscribed, and get unsubscribed again. Yes. And then if you manage to stay through that, there's an equal number of people that are just getting frustrated with the inundation of a terrific amount of ads onto our site. So I don't really want to read any more comments about, hey, I don't get any of the, I'm here, I've never been unsubscribed. Those aren't the people I'm worried about. Everybody out there that has been unsubscribed or doesn't get notifications, I do want to hear from you, because I post those back in the comments, and I know that there's people out there in the real world that are watching. Something's going on, and as I stated, I'm not, some people said, oh, you're leaving, no, I never said I was leaving. I'm not leaving YouTube. And I've never taken donations from anybody. So it's very kind of you. Said, Dave, put up a site and we'll donate. I don't believe in paying people for doing nothing. And what I've always asked people to do is buy a book and donate it to your local library. That way it gets to people who couldn't afford to read the book. And it does a good thing for the world. So that's the way I want people to donate. And then when we get to the point of going to a new channel, probably Zoom, and on Zoom what we'll do is we'll have live events, probably for an hour, hour and a half, something like that. People said, oh, I'm not sitting around for an hour, hour and a half. Well, don't. Somewhere between $2.50 and $6, we haven't figured out that soft point yet where we could get the majority of the people. I realize there's people that can't afford it. I'm not saying anything about that. I understand. But that's kind of where we're at. Now, the case today, very, very unusual. I've never read about it anywhere. It's our own research. It's another thing I want to talk about. People say, well, why do you get mad about other people stealing your stuff? Maybe I'm stingy. I don't like the idea that I'm supporting a bunch of copycats out there. It really turns my crank. And not one of them has ever given me a penny for all the original research we do, and then all they do is watch us and replicate it. I don't like it. I've never liked it. Well, maybe they're reaching more people. Well, maybe they are. And if they weren't up, maybe they'd just reach us. So, anyhow, it's probably a fault of mine, but it is what it is. So this case, you watch. Everyone will be talking about it within a month. It'll be on like 10 sites. I usually don't talk about planes and incidents involving planes. This one is weird. A Cessna 182. I've been in them several times. 4-passenger, single-engine plane. The wings are up above where you sit. 4-passenger. It left Santee, California, Southern California, headed for South Dakota. It had 4 people on board. The pilot was Dennis Z., 29, lived in Santee. His friend, David Browning, also 29. And a lady, Mrs. Janice Dial, 26, who was friends with both of the other 2 men. And she was flying with her 4-month-old baby, Cary Lynn. And they were flying Janice to see relatives in Deadwood. She hadn't seen them in a while. This incident happened January 14th, 1971. They left Santee, California, and they started to fly northeast. Now let's hold our taters for a second and I'll give you some background information. Mrs. Dial, Janice, was a graduate of the University of Maryland, and she had worked in the Pentagon before. On December 29th, 1968, she married Ralph Dial in Illinois. Now Janice had always been from Southern Cal, but once she married Ralph, they moved to Washington, D.C., where they were working for the government. On November 15th, 1969, Ralph, her husband, was killed by a drunk driver in Washington, D.C. in an auto accident. Now, I swear to you, sometimes when I do these cases, it just seems as though there's an aura around families of huge trauma, negativity. People have said that about me and my life, and I get that. I've had a lot of bad things happen to me since Ben died. I think about it all the time. So Ralph was the husband of Janice, and he gets killed in an auto accident. Janice does probably what most people would do. She moves back to Southern California around her family for support. Now, she wasn't dating the other 2 men in the plane. They were just really good friends for apparently years and years and years. And Dennis knew that she didn't have a lot of money, and he was pretty well off, so he decided to rent a plane and fly Janice back to see family. He rented the 182 from an organization called the El Cajon Flying Service. For people who don't know, a lot of these small municipal airports have flying clubs, flying services. You can join the club, and then you can rent the plane a lot cheaper than if you just came in from the outside. Now, in those instances, you have to go in and you have to prove that you can fly the plane. It's just not like going into Hertz and renting a car. So Dennis was already checked out in the 182. He was ready to go. He paid for the flight, so Janice didn't have to absorb any of those costs. On the January 12th, Janice calls relatives up in Deadwood. Stop for a second. When I saw that, okay, so she loses her husband, drunk driver. Now she's going to Deadwood. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Calls relatives up. She's all excited. She says, yeah, we're going to leave. I'll be up there. I'll be looking forward to seeing you guys. I have some friends coming with me, blah, blah, blah. They're all excited. So on January 14th, the group of 4 left Santee, and they flew without any incident, and they landed and refueled at Grand Canyon Airport. They had a flight plan filed with the Federal Aviation Agency. They were flying onto Deadwood, and they had to cross the Continental Divide. The Continental Divide is this long line of mountains north to south, essentially. And the Continental Divide gets up over 14,000 feet in elevation. To cross the divide, if you don't really pick your spot, a pass, you're going to have to go up way over 14,000, maybe even 15,000 to get over. Now, that 182, it doesn't have a ton of power. I know this because my dad had a plane when we were younger. We flew all around. It was a turbocharged Blanca, had tons of power. This 182 did not and does not. And when you put 4 people in it with baggage, you're stressing that plane out about as much as you can. Well, at 4 o'clock that afternoon, so let me show you what the path they're taking here, because this is important. So they stop at Grand Canyon Airport, and this is essentially the straight route they're flying. Now, the road, I'm just showing you the road route here. The road route would be about 525 miles. The straight route, probably 460 miles. And that is between here and the Continental Divide. Continental Divide, being that straight shot, would have been Mount Shavano, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. By car, it's about a 9-hour and 37-minute trip. Obviously, by plane, much shorter. Interesting point, he probably would have flown right over the Four Corners area, the Ute Reservation, San Juan National Forest, to Hell You Ride, and then on to Mount Shavano. Got it? So, as Dennis is flying the plane, he's approaching the divide, and he states to air traffic control, I'm entering bad weather. I'm near Salida, some say Salida, Colorado. Notifies him, still going northeast. Nothing else said. No other contacts ever made. That's the last that anyone heard of Dennis. Now that Cessna 182, it doesn't have de-icing on board. What do I mean by that? So on every commercial jet, they can fly in almost any kind of weather except thunderstorms. And they can turn on de-icing on their wings and on the fuselage, and that way ice doesn't develop. Ice develops on a plane, it causes a plane to get a lot heavier, a lot quicker, lose their lift, and it starts sending them down. Now on a 182, Dennis is smart. He knows that those mountains are 14,000 and change tall. But he probably got into a predicament. As you fly into a storm on these small planes, and you start to see ice developing, the only thing you can do is go down lower in elevation where it's warmer and the ice will stop developing. But he's in a conundrum. He goes down and now he's below the peaks of the mountains. Huge risk. Huge risk. My dad, when we flew with him, he was a super conservative pilot. And he said, he told me when I was like 20 years old, he said, Dave, a lot of pilots get killed because they're in a rush. They won't turn around and land and just wait an extra day. They're in a rush to get to where they're going. And it kills hundreds of pilots every year. I remember the distinct conversation. And I actually thought about this when I was writing up this story. Well, no further transmissions. Plane doesn't make it to Deadwood. And because he had filed a flight plan, that starts sending off alerts. The U.S. Air Force gets involved. Eventually, the Civil Air Patrol in Colorado gets involved. And the Civil Air Patrol gets requested on January 16th to start flying sorties around the Continental Divide looking for the 182. Now, the issue was they didn't have a crash site. They didn't know if he was on the east side, the west side, in the valley, in the forest down below. They have no clue. Now, that is another reason why you always want to carry a transponder. This happened in 71. 71, they had transponders, and for planes. Big handheld ones. They look like a giant old cell phone. My dad had one. Well, they start flying the sorties, the Civil Air Patrol. And when the patrol goes up, they're flying planes just like the 182. And usually they have at least 2 spotters, one on each side of the plane and the pilot. Pilot can't be looking all the time. They got to be flying and looking for other planes. So the spotters are looking for anomalies on the ground. Gigantic area was searched. The U.S. Air Force assisted Colorado Civil Air Patrol in developing the search parameters and the criteria. And the focus of the search was Mount Shavano, above Salida, Colorado. Mount Shavano. I've seen it many times. 14,220 feet tall in Chaffee County, Colorado. It's in the San Isabel National Forest. It's named for Chief Shavano. Now, at the bottom of the mountain is Salida, and from that bottom, the peak rises about 7,200 feet. This mountain is interesting because at the top, it has boulders in it. Smallest one's probably the size of a big car. The biggest one's the size of a house. Huge boulders. Now, a very unusual thing about Mount Shavano is that on the southeast slopes, when the snow starts to fall, there's an impression that the snow leaves as it falls into cracks in the mountain, etc., that look like an angel. Another strange part of this story. It's called the Angel of Shavano. And there's a campground called the Angel of Shavano. Now, you can't really see the angel here, but this is Mount Shavano. So, right here you can kind of see timberline. Now, up above timberline, there's nothing growing. It's just rock, gravel, blah, blah, blah. It has a climbing rating of 2, which is not horrible. And the mountain, this is part of the angel that you see, wings going out on both sides, the body. And they show it to you better off online. If you look at it online, Angel of Shavano, you can see it really well. And remember what I told you about these name associations with this case? Just, they bother me the wrong way. What can I say? Now, when the search is going on, which, is January 16th, 17th, 18th, the weather in this area can be brutal. The winds going over the top of these mountains, it could be 100 miles an hour. And therein lies the other thing about flying over these mountains in a small plane in the winter when the weather isn't perfect. You could hit a downdraft and just throw that plane right into the mountain. Well, January 17th, the Civil Air Patrol puts up 15 planes. And they're flying not just around Shavano, they're flying all over. 18th, there's 14 planes. And then the 19th through the 22nd, there's 15 to 20 planes searching these areas. Now, it's important when you're in a plane that you have other planes fly the same area that other planes have flown, because depending on the day, the sun conditions, the shading, things can look so different. And because it's winter, Mount Shavano can have 20, 30 feet of snow drifts. So a plane could hit the mountain, causing an avalanche and bury the plane easily. But they're looking. January 22nd, Chaffee County is part of the search manifestation that's going on. And with the Civil Air Patrol, they decided to terminate the search. And again, really, there was nobody going up on the mountain. That would be crazy. It was just aircraft, helicopter, and planes. Now, when you're searching around January, there's parts of these mountains at 14,000 feet that never lose their snow. They have glaciers up there, all kinds of things. Now, I'm not really in tune with what's up there on Shavano all year. I'm just saying that snow can stay up there all year. But on January 13th, 1971, about 6 months after the incident happened, there's two hikers that lived in Salida that are hiking Shavano off the main trail. A man named Jack Cady and Dr. Jack Rowland. Now, it never said it, but it kind of implied to me that maybe they were looking for this plane because they came across the wreckage of a 182 and bodies. They came down, they notified the sheriff, and they said that the wreckage was horrific. To them, it looked like the plane just flew right into the side of the mountain. And they could tell that there were bodies. And they explained where it was. So the next day, the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, the coroner, and the men got up on the site. And they stated that the plane had hit so hard that it had collapsed onto itself. But after being up there all day one day and working with the jaws of life, they were able to extract 3 bodies out of the plane. Well, Dave, why are you telling us this story? Hold your taters. So they get the 3 bodies. Now, they knew that there were at least 3 people, but they thought that there were 4 people on the plane. And they looked around, and there was a lot of snow and snow drifts, but all the bodies were generally in the same area, and they theorized that the plane hit the mountain, cartwheeled partially down the mountain, and they found 1 body outside the plane. They couldn't tell if the person was alive, but they didn't think so. Probably just got forced out of the plane upon impact. So what they decided to do is come back with the coroner. The coroner came in, they got the bodies, but they didn't see Cary, the baby, 4-month-old baby. So they notify all of the relatives of the people. And the only relatives that were still alive were the grandparents of Janice. And they said, no, that baby was on the plane. We know it was on the plane. Positive that baby was on the plane. Baby was seen in Arizona. Janice said that she was taking the baby with her. So 2 days later, June 17th, 6 members of the Monarch Pass Search and Rescue Organization from Gunnison, Colorado, were airlifted onto the mountain by the military, and they searched for Cary for 10 hours. They found nothing. And now it's not making any sense. Chaffee County Sheriff had a press press conference and said that he wanted to wait for more snow to melt just in case they were missing something. So they wait 2.5, 3 weeks. July 6th, a military helicopter from Fort Carson's medical detachment brings 5 searchers and 2 canines up onto the side of the mountain. Well, as they were going on towards the mountain, the wind was so bad, it forced the helicopter to land not that far away. It was brutal, they said. They eventually got the helicopter up in the air again, and they went right back to the airport and landed and stayed there. They waited 2 days, July 8th. Same searchers, same dogs. They got them up onto the side, and they searched. Now, you're bringing cadaver dogs onto that side of that mountain. Dogs would have picked up a scent there within miles. I guarantee it. But they weren't picking up anything. Remember what I told you, that the mountain is barren except for large boulders. So you don't have the scent trail of trees and pollen and things. Now this entire time, Mr. and Mrs. Ed Knoll, the grandparents, were talking to search and rescue every day. Highly religious people, it was imperative that they find this baby. Janice had a brother named Clifford, and Clifford was helping the grandparents stay in close contact with the sheriff's office and the searchers. Now I'm just telling you, one of the oddest things I've ever heard is that they couldn't find Cary, the baby. Well, what they did is the military brought in a big chopper and they pulled the plane out, took it to a hangar, and the FAA came in and did their investigation. And the thought pattern was they were going to take this plane apart, with the jaws of life, because it was all horribly mangled. And they thought at the time, maybe Cary's inside, bundled up, crashed, condensed into the size of a glove compartment or something. They had no idea, but they took that plane apart piece by piece. Cary wasn't in the plane. To me, that makes no sense. I'm sorry. Even in a horrific crash, when a plane goes straight into the side of the mountain, initial force will send you that same direction. And if you are ejected, you're going to hit the mountain and roll down. You're not going to roll up. And on a mountain like that, during that time of the year, there are no predators up there. Nothing that's going to eat a body or drag it away. So let me review this with you. Janice loses her husband to a drunk driver. Janice and 2 friends die in a plane crash. Imagine if you're Janice's family, what you're going through as well. And then Cary, who presumably died in that aircraft, is never found. But she disappears on the side of a mountain that's known for an angel on the side. I thought about this all day. How weird. Mount Shavano. Now, understandably, it's been over 50 years. Cary's never been found. I don't understand it. And if I don't understand it, I don't think the searchers ever understood it either. Horrible, horrible incident. And you just have to pray that the people who died in that plane never knew what hit them. If they were flying in restricted air, meaning you couldn't see IFR, instrument flight rule, then they probably never saw that mountain. So friends, that's my one story for today. I appreciate you being here. Please share this on your social media. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed. And please follow me on Twitter. It's called X now. And it's at CanAm Missing, like Canadian American, at CanAm Missing. Post up there every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. Everybody on there is very polite, very nice. It's a totally different space now. Speaking of being nice, kindness revolution. Doesn't cost us anything to be nice to each other. And I'm very grateful, and I say my prayers every night, that I have Huck to hang out with me now. I'm very grateful. Be kind to your family. Please share this. Paulides out.